Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron. Oh, smack the mic. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we are going to be going over all of the weapons in Killing Floor 2 once again, this time as off-perk weapons. So we're going to be taking a look at each of these very briefly. I'm not going to be explaining each of them, similar to how I did the survivalist list, and this is the exact same as the survivalist list, so there's going to be some weird repeats too. I'm just going to skip over them, and we're going to be discussing which of these work best as off-perk weapons, so weapons that you could take with other classes that they're not meant for. So the first one is the M4 versus the Static Strikers. The M4 is more lightweight than the Static Strikers. Static Strikers weigh a lot, and ultimately you're just going to be using them to block and parry with, which there's better melee weapons than them. Their unique EMP attack does help, but I still think I'd give this one to the M4. Up next we have the nail gun or the compound bow. Compound bow is a big investment in money, as well as it has a pretty good weight. You can freeze enemies with it, and you do have essentially infinite ammo, so it's not a bad choice. But I think the nail gun here is still better. It's cheaper, and it weighs less. Those two things are going to be very important. The double barrel or the cock and burn. The cock and burn honestly does pretty bad on every class that's not Firebug. It does really well on Firebugs, so getting it on another class doesn't really make that much sense. Double barrel is lightweight. It's actually the same weight as the cock and burn, I think. I think these are both 5. And double barrel still has high damage and gives you bonus mobility, so double barrel. The Tesla launcher or the blunderbuss. Neither one of these would be great weapons to take as off-perk weapons. They're both expensive and heavy. I guess the EMP from the Tesla launcher makes more sense to take over the blunderbuss, since the blunderbuss is just damage, and you could likely go with an on-perk weapon for more damage. I'm assuming you're taking this for the EMP or even the microwave effect of it. Doomstick or the M14, both these weapons also don't make great off-perk weapons. The Doomstick does give you bonus mobility and it hits very hard even without any sort of damage increase, but it weighs a lot. The M14 is more lightweight, but it's still not particularly light. It still weighs 7, so you're giving up a lot of weight for it. I think I'd rather go with the M14 here. The Hemoclobber or the Killerwatt. Both these actually make decent off-perk weapons. The Killerwatt, with its status effect doing EMP damage and being a general overall okay weapon since it doesn't get any bonuses or negatives from anything. The Hemoclobber is really good as an off-perk weapon though because it's very lightweight, you can block and parry with it, and it gives you a healing weapon. So Hemoclobber is moving on. The minigun or the fire axe. The minigun just simply weighs too much. The fire axe is far more practical. The fire axe is also cheaper. The 2011 or the M32 grenade launcher. Both these weapons aren't particularly cheap, but if you're buying one 2011, it is more lightweight, it is cheaper, it makes more sense to take. The M32 probably wouldn't be a bad off-perk weapon because it would do well against crowds and do okay against flesh pounds, but the reload would be very slow and you'd be investing a lot of money for it. So I'd give this one to the 2011, assuming you're just taking one. If you're taking 2, then I'd say it's a toss-up. C4 or the Mine Reconstructor. C4 is very lightweight, it's very cheap, which is very good, and it does very high damage. The Mine Reconstructor is a bit awkward to use. It can heal allies, but like I said, it is kind of awkward. I would go with C4 here. Rhino or the Blast Brawlers. Blast Brawlers are not all that great of a weapon. You can block and parry with them, and they do give you a ranged option, but it is a heavy weight. Rhino is far less weight, far cheaper, and you can just grab one of them and have a pretty decent pistol to use. Ion Thruster or the Medic SMG. Medic SMG definitely wins here. It's much more lightweight, much cheaper, and it gives you a healing option. Ion Thruster wouldn't be a bad option because it does do high damage, and you can block and parry with it, but for its cost and its weight, it's not really worth it to go for an off-perk weapon. So Medic SMG. The Road Redeemer or the Buckshot. Both these are not bad weapons to take as off-perk weapons because they're both fairly cheap. They also don't weigh very much. Buckshots are pretty strong early on. You can get a decent amount of ammunition, and they do hit as hard as like the 500 Magnum, which is a good thing if you just want to take one of them, and you don't have to be particularly accurate with it. Road Redeemer you can block and parry with, and it does do okay damage, but I think I'd give this one to the Buckshot. The FAMAS Master Key or the Katana. I would give this one to the Katana. It's more lightweight, you can block and parry with it, and it's cheap. FAMAS is not particularly cheap. It is more flexible, I guess, because it has so many varying ranges and so much uniqueness about it, but I'd still rather have the Katana as an off-perk weapon. The M99 or the Incendiary Rifle. Both of these don't make very good off-perk weapons. The Incendiary Rifle is a Firebug weapon, and they usually don't work all that great off of Firebug. They work much better on Firebug, and for the rest of the classes, they aren't generally that great. The M99 is also not good, though, because the M99 weighs 12, so you're giving up a lot of weight to take it. It does hit really hard, but it also costs a lot, and it's just not all that practical a lot of the time to take it as an off-perk weapon, so I guess the Incendiary Rifle wins here by default. The FAL or the MAC-10? I would probably give this one to the MAC-10. It's much more lightweight at only 4 weight. You can more easily take it with other weapons, and it doesn't cost as much as the FAL. FAL will hit harder, and it's not a bad off-perk weapon, though, because it does do pretty good at all ranges. Kroval or the Riot Shield with the Glock 18, I would give this one to the Kroval. Kroval's extremely cheap. If you want to grab it, you can right at the very start. You might find it on the ground. The Riot Shield, it's just too much of a price investment, too much of a weight investment. Grenade Pistol or the MKB-42, I would say the Grenade Pistol, it's still quite strong with upgrades, without upgrades. It doesn't weigh too much, it's less weight than the MKB. And it still hits pretty hard. Beluga Beat or the Pump Shotgun. Honestly, I think I'm going to go with the Beluga Beat here. It can knock enemies around pretty easily, and its microwave damage is pretty good. The Pump Shotgun's not bad because it is very cheap and it hits pretty hard. But I feel like there would be a reason to take the Beluga Beat as an off-perk weapon if you just want to bully bosses or bully flesh pounds and scrakes. So I would go with that one. The Scar or the Incision. The Incision, you can have an EMP effect. It does weigh more than the Scar, but it also hits harder than the Scar, and you can heal with it. Those are all pretty big advantages. The Scar is kind of lightweight, and it does hit fairly hard. It's also pretty easy to control, which is nice, but 20-round clip can kind of be a bit of an annoyance with it, so I'd say Incision. The Spitfire or the Kaboom Stick, both these actually make pretty good off-perk weapons because Spitfires only weigh 2, assuming you're just taking one of them. They scale pretty well with upgrades, they do high damage, they can cause floor fires and spread fire to other enemies. They're one of the better firebug weapons because they are so cheap and so effective, especially if you get one, it's only $3.25 then, so very cheap. Kaboom Stick, though, hits really hard and gives you bonus mobility. And at a weight of 6, you can usually get away with using it with whatever other loadout you want to take. So I would say Kaboom Stick here. The Husk Cannon or the P90, I would say the P90 here. P90 is much more lightweight. You get a lot of bullets with it, and you're going to be using it to kill small enemies. So it's not a bad off-perk weapon to take. Husk Cannon's a big weight investment, even though it does hit harder. Freeze Thrower or the Eviscerator. You can block and parry with the Eviscerator. It's also ranged. It does weigh a lot, though, at 9. So that's a lot of weight and a lot of money to get this. Freeze Thrower is cheaper, and you can freeze enemies with it. It doesn't really benefit or lose out on any other perk, so I would say the Freeze Thrower wins here. I would say Dragon's Breath wins here. It's cheaper, it's more lightweight. It hits pretty hard, and it works well against crowds. Seeker 6 weighs a decent amount. It's not always the easiest to use on every map, and it can be a bit of a hassle to fit into other loadouts. The Mosin or the Flamethrower. Neither one of these are fantastic off-perk weapons, but neither one of them are terrible either. Mosin hits really hard. You do have a melee weapon. You can also block and parry with it. Flamethrower does very well against crowds. Even if you're not playing Firebug, it still will shred through crowds pretty quick. Aside from that, it's not going to do much to anything else. So if you only want it for crowds, you could use the Flamethrower, but it does weigh a lot. Mosin still comes in at a hefty weight, but it works well against pretty much everything because of its high damage, so I think I'd pick Mosin here. The Winchester or the MP5, both these weapons don't weigh very much. I would say this one goes to the Winchester, though. The Winchester scales better with upgrades if you want to throw upgrades into it, and it hits harder without upgrades anyway. It actually hits a pretty nice amount of damage with each shot, and it's just a pretty strong weapon to pick up off the ground. The Medic Assault Rifle or the MP7. This one's kind of a difficult one because with the Medic Assault Rifle, it does weigh a decent amount. It doesn't do the highest amount of damage. It does have noticeable recoil if you're taking it off perk, but you can heal with it, which is a big advantage. The MP7 is more lightweight. It's good for killing small enemies because it has a good rate of fire, a good clip size, and it has very nice sights. I think for this one, I'm going to give it to the MP7. HZ12 or 500 Magnum. Ooh, this one's difficult. The HZ12 works really well early on, even if you're not support, because it does have a large clip size, it has okay sights, it does decent damage. 500 Magnum, though, is just as cheap as it if you're getting one of them, and it's even more lightweight than the HZ12 by 2 weight, I believe, and the 500 Magnum does hit pretty hard at any range. I think I'd give this one to the 500 Magnum, assuming you're taking one of them. Even if you're taking 2, they're still quite good. The Bullpup or the RPG. The RPG as an off-perk weapon is actually pretty good because it still hits like an RPG. Even though it is a single shot, even though you're going to be reloading it kind of slow, it still hits really hard, even for the 9 weight that it is. The bullpup's not a bad weapon. It has gotten better with its lower weight. Think I'd give it more to the RPG as an off-perk weapon, but the bullpup's not a bad option to take early on. Gravity Imploder or the Arc Generator, both these weapons are really heavy. Both these weapons work pretty well against everything. I think I would give it to the Arc Generator just because it works a bit better against enemies and has more status effects. So I think I'd do that one. Winter Bites or the Medic Shotgun. Ooh, this one's hard too. Winter Bites, especially just one of them, is pretty good as an off-perk weapon because it's cheap, it doesn't weigh very much, and you can freeze enemies with it. Medic Shotgun also doesn't weigh too much. It does high damage, it has long range, it has not that bad a recoil. You can reload the whole clip all at once, and you can heal with it. So that is really good too. I think I would give it to the Winter Bite though, because being able to freeze and low weight is really nice. But that one's another one that could go either way. AR-15 or Seal Squeal, neither one of these are great off-perk weapons. I guess I'd give it to the AR-15 because without Demo's passive damage resist, you could blow yourself up easily with the Seal Squeal, and the Seal Squeal does weigh a weird amount of weight. The AR-15 is fairly lightweight, and you might be able to find it off the ground, so I guess I'd give it to that one. The Heal Thrower or the Desert Eagle. The Heal Thrower does not work very well on any class that's not Medic, because you can't apply the healing buffs, or the buffs from your healing, with the spray of this, so it doesn't work as well there. It is cheap for a Medic weapon, but it also weighs a lot. Desert Eagle, if you're getting one of them, hits really hard. It's very cheap, and it's really lightweight, so I'd say Desert Eagle here. Alright, M4 Nail Gun. I think I'd give this one to the M4. They're both about the same price, but the M4 I think hits a bit harder than the Nail Gun does. Nail Gun wouldn't be a terrible option, though. Double Barrel or the Tesla Launcher. Giving this one to the Double Barrel, it's more lightweight, and it gives you mobility. That's a pretty big bonus. M14 or Hemoclobber. Giving this one to the Hemoclobber. Lightweight, can heal, and can block and parry. Very strong off-perk weapon. The Fire Axe or the 2011, I would give this one to the Fire Axe, can block and parry and do pretty decent damage with it. It's also, I think they're the same price actually, if you're just taking one. C4 or the Rhino, I'd give this one to C4. C4 works pretty well on every class. Rhino wouldn't be a bad choice though either. A Medic SMG or the Buckshots, both these are lightweight. I would think I would give this one to the Medic SMG though, because it does have healing and it works well against small enemies. Buckshot works decently well against most things. And it's still lightweight. So again, not a bad off-perk weapon to take. Katana or the Incendiary Rifle, I'd give this one to the Katana. Can block and parry, and it's cheaper, as well as it's more lightweight. MAC-10 or the Kroval, this one's an interesting one. I think I'd give this one to the Kroval. It's even cheaper, they're both the same weight. You can block and parry with the Kroval. I think that's a bit better than the MAC-10. Although, again, the MAC-10 is not a bad option because it's not that expensive and it works well against small enemies. Grenade Pistol or Beluga Beat? I think I'd give this one to Beluga Beat. It has very interesting status effects and it works well against bosses. Grenade Pistol is lightweight, though, and it's cheap, which is good. The Incision or the Kaboom Stick? Ooh, this one's kind of difficult. I think I'd give this one to the Kaboom Stick. It's more lightweight, it's less specialized, and it's just for damage and for mobility, whereas the Incision can heal, which is useful, and it can apply the EMP effects, which is also useful, and it also hits decently hard. So these wouldn't be bad. I don't think they'd be great off-perk weapons, though, too, because they still are getting into that kind of awkward weight. P90 or the Freeze Thrower? I think I'd give this one to the P90. P90 is more lightweight, and you get more bullets with it. I think that fits a bit better, although the Freeze Thrower is not a bad off-perk weapon because freezing enemies is always a good thing. The Dragon's Breath or the Mosin, I think I'd give this one to Dragon's Breath. It's more lightweight. It does hit pretty hard, and it's pretty good against crowds. Mosin hits really hard against enemies, and you can block and parry with it, but it comes in at an awkward weight. Winchester or MP7, I think I'd give this one to the Winchester. Winchester hits harder. MP7's not bad for killing small enemies, though, and both these are very cheap because they're tier 1 weapons. 500 Magnum or Rocket Launcher? I think I'd give this one to the 500 Magnum. It's more lightweight, you can fit it into more loadouts, and it hits really hard. The RPG is really fun to take as an off-perk weapon, but I think the 500 Magnum will get you better success on most waves besides maybe boss wave. Arc Generator, Winter Bites. Winter Bites here, they're way lighter than the Arc Generator. Both of them have really good status effects, but the weight really wins it out for the Winter Bites. AR-15 or Desert Eagle? Desert Eagle easily. It has much more damage. It's more lightweight. The M4 or the Double Barrel? I'd give this one to the Double Barrel. Double Barrel's more lightweight and gives you mobility. That's a bigger advantage, I'd say. Hemoclobber or Fire Axe? Hemoclobber, it's more lightweight and you get a healing weapon as well as you can block and parry. C4 or the medic SMG. Ooh, this one's really hard. Both these weigh the same. Both of them are very good to take on pretty much any class. They only weigh 3. You don't need to upgrade them. The medic submachine gun can heal, and it's very good against small enemies. C4 is really good against large enemies, though. I think for this one, I'd give it to C4, but just barely. I could see myself picking either one of these. It depends on what loadout I'm going with, but these are two of the best off-perk weapons. Katana or the Kroval? I think I'd honestly go with the Katana over the Kroval. Even though it is a little bit more expensive and I'm not getting that much better of a weapon, and if you're just strapped on money, it makes more sense to go with the Kroval, or just to find the Kroval and keep using that over the Katana. But I find the Katana is a little bit less sluggish when it's off-perk. So I think I'd pick Katana. Beluga Beat or Kaboom Stick? Beluga Beat has more status effects, Kaboom Stick has more damage. I think I'd go with the Kaboom Stick for more damage and the fact you can't hurt yourself with it, as well as it gives you mobility. But the Beluga Beat wouldn't be a bad choice as an off-perk weapon either. P90 or the Dragon's Breath? I think these weigh the same or about the same. Maybe this one's 6 and this one's 5. I think they're both 5 though. I think I'd go with the P90 here. It's more lightweight, you get a lot of bullets, and it's really good at killing small enemies. The Dragon's Breath is also really good at killing small enemies, but it's not as lightweight, I think. I could be wrong about that. If so, then it could be a toss-up between the two. I don't think either one is bad. Winchester or 500 Magnum? I think I'd go with 500 Magnum here. It's still pretty cheap. It's not as cheap as the Winchester. It does hit harder than the Winchester. Without upgrading the Winchester, then I think the Winchester hits harder than it. But for most off-perk weapons, you're generally not going to upgrade them. You're probably just going to get 1 or maybe 2 of these and then just use them as is. Ooh, Winter Bites or Desert Eagles. Both these weigh the same. Both of them make really good off-perk weapons. These are, again, 2 of probably the best off-perk weapons. I think I'd give this to the Winter Bites just because you can freeze enemies with it. If you want more damage, the Deagles are better. But if you want the status effect, which is probably why you're going off-perk, then Winter Bites are probably better. Ooh, Double Barrel or the Hemoclobber. I'd give this one the Hemoclobber. It's even more lightweight. You can heal with it and you can block and parry. The extra mobility from the Double Barrel is nice and the high damage from it is also nice, but I think the Hemoclobber here wins. C4 or Katana, I give this one to C4. It's more lightweight and it fits into more loadouts easier, I'd say. It also is a good weapon to have if you want to blow up a Flesh Pound or something. Speaking of good weapons to blow up a Flesh Pound, I think I'd go with the Kaboom Stick here. Even though the P90 is nice and lightweight, and has a lot of bullets, I think the Kaboom Stick is still just so good just for its base damage that it works well on every class. 500 Magnum or Winter Bites? Ooh, this one's kind of difficult because the 500 Magnum hits really hard, but the Winter Bites freeze things and are cheaper. I think I'd go with the Winter Bite just because of the status effect that you can freeze things with it. 500 Magnum would not be a bad choice though. Hemoclobber or C4? Oh, that one's a really difficult one. You can block and parry and heal with the Hemoclobber as well as it's lightweight. The C4 is even more lightweight and you can blow up Flesh Pounds with it really easily. I guess it depends what you want. If you want more defensive, pick the Hemoclobber. If you want more offensive, C4. I think I would go with the Hemoclobber here, but this is really tough. Alright, Kaboom Stick or Winter Bites? I think I'd actually go with the Kaboom Stick here. It still has really high damage, and it gives you mobility, even though the Winter Bites can freeze enemies and are really useful. And then the Hemoclobber, the Kaboom Stick. I think I'd go with the Hemoclobber here. It can heal, it can block and parry. That's really good. That's really useful in any class, and it's lightweight. Kaboom Stick isn't as lightweight. It can still fit into most loadouts, and it hits really hard, but I think I'd go with Hemoclobber here. Difficult choice. The Glock 18 or the Medic Pistol? Medic Pistol wins here. It's extremely lightweight. You can heal allies with it, and it does okay damage towards small enemies. Glock 18 does really well against small enemies too, and taking one Glock is not a bad idea. It's also not too expensive either. 1911 or the Medic Grenade Rifle? I think I'd give this one a 1911. More lightweight. You can buy it pretty early on because it's cheap and it does decent damage. It also has a decent rate of fire. 501 is good for healing, but you're pretty much just getting for the Medic Grenades, not really for the Assault Rifle part. And it's not really worth the Medic Grenades at the price. Crossbow or Tommy Gun? I think I'd go with the Crossbow here. Crossbow hits really hard and it's really cheap. It also doesn't weigh too much. 1858 or the Vampire? I'd go with the 1858 here. It's cheaper, it's more lightweight, it just fits a little bit better. Plus, you might be able to find it off the ground. Pulverizer or Hemogoblin? I think I'd go with Pulverizer here. It's more lightweight. It is specialized. You can block and parry with it, and its heavy attacks can kill flesh pounds pretty quickly. So even if it's not on somebody like Demo or Berserker. Scorcher or AA-12? Neither one of these are really great off-perk weapons. Scorcher is more lightweight, and the fires can do well against small enemies. AA-12 is generally a better weapon towards crowds and stuff, especially when you don't have firebug perks like Scorcher does. But the AA-12 is heavy, so I think I'd go with Scorcher. Nailgun or Centerfire? Both these weapons are pretty good off-perk weapons. Nailgun is cheap, it does high damage, its ammo is cheap, all around pretty good. Centerfire does really high damage, it's also cheap. I think I'd go with the Centerfire here. I think they both weigh the same too. AK or Helios Rifle? I think I'd go with the AK here, it's more lightweight. It's cheaper than the Helios Rifle, even though the Helios Rifle does have microwave damage, and that is generally better against most enemies. The AK does have nice sights and is okay-ish at close and medium range, even without recoil reduction. Not so good at long range. Thermite Bore or a Stoner? I would pick Thermite Bore here just because it has more damage. Other than that, both of them make pretty bad off-perk weapons. They're way too heavy. Chris Vector or the Railgun? I think I'd go with Railgun here, because at least with Railgun you get a lot more damage, even though it's a single-shot weapon with a slow rate of fire. I think that kind of beats out the Chris Vector, even though the Vector is more lightweight and could fit into more loadouts. It's just, it has such a small magazine size outside of SWAT that it's usually not super useful. Zweihander or Grenade Launcher? This one's kind of interesting. Good for crowds, good for large enemies. Zweihander does well against most things, although it's still not way great for the weight. And its block and parry is okay. I think I'd pick the Zweihander because you can block and parry with it. The M45 or the Frostfang? Frostfang wins here because you can freeze enemies with it, and you can also block and parry with it. Bastion or the Microwave Gun? I would go with the Bastion. You get the shield with it. That's pretty much the main reason. Even though it's expensive, you still get the shield, which is pretty nice. Battle Axe or the M16? M16 wins here. Battle Axe can block and parry, but it weighs 10, and it costs a lot. M16, you do get some more functions like a grenade launcher on it, and it works well against small enemies. It also doesn't weigh too much. Medic Pistol or 1911? Medic Pistol, it's even more lightweight, and you can heal allies with it. Crossbow or 1858? Crossbow does high damage and doesn't weigh too much. Pulverizer or Scorcher? Pulverizer, you can block and parry with it, and Scorcher's not that great off perk. Centerfire or AK? Centerfire, it does more damage, and it has longer range. Thermite Bore or Railgun? Probably Railgun. It does more damage. They're both heavy, so they're not great off-perk weapons. Zweihander or Frostfang? Frostfang, it's the same weight as the Zweihander, and you can do everything the Zweihander can, but you can also shoot freezing shells, so wins there. Bastion or M16? I guess the Bastion, because it doesn't weigh that much more, even though it costs more than the M16. You still get the shield on it, which is pretty nice. Bone Crusher or Bone Crusher? I guess the Bone Crusher wins. And then we got some repeats here, so I'll just go through them. Medic Pistol or Crossbow? Medic Pistol here, it's lightweight. You can heal allies with it. That's really good. Crossbow is a good off-perk weapon, though, too, because it does have high damage, and you get a lot of value from picking up your crossbow bolts. It also doesn't weigh too much, as I've said a couple times now. Pulverizer or Centerfire? Centerfire, it has really high damage and it's pretty lightweight. Railgun or Frostfang? Frostfang, you can block and parry and shoot freezing shells. Bastion or Bone Crusher? I guess Bastion because it's more lightweight and it still has a shield similar to that. You can also shoot it. Medic Pistol or Centerfire? I think the Medic Pistol here, again, it fits into more loadouts. You can heal allies with it, and it works pretty well. Although Centerfire, again, is a really good off-perk weapon because of how hard it hits. Frostfang or the Bastion? I'd say the Frostfang because you can block and parry with it, and it shoots freezing shells. Medic Pistol or Frostfang? That one's kind of difficult because you can freeze enemies. You get bonus melee damage if you freeze an enemy with the Frostfang. It does weigh a decent amount, though, at, I think, 7, whereas the Medic Pistol weighs 1. Which gives it a huge advantage compared to most weapons because you can easily fit a Medic Pistol in. You can also heal with the Medic Pistol, which is great, and the Medic Pistol does work well against small enemies. Freezing enemies is really good, though, too, at the Frostfang. So either of these would work good, but I'm going to give it to the Medic Pistol. And then in our last matchup, we have the Hemoclobber or the Medic Pistol as our best off-perk weapon. Both of these are really good. If you want a more defensive weapon, the Hemoclobber is better. The Hemoclobber also can give more burst healing. At the same time, the Medic Pistol can also heal, which is good. It can't heal as much as the Hemoclobber or deal as much damage with its healing as the Hemoclobber. You also can't block and parry with it. But its big advantage is that it only weighs 1, whereas the Hemoclobber weighs 4. Neither of those are particularly hard to fit into loadouts for most classes, so both these can fit into quite a few, but the Medic Pistol does fit into more, and I think I will give this one to the Medic Pistol. We had a lot of really tough off-perk weapons to pick. If you're looking for an off-perk weapon, as you can kind of tell from this list, generally the best thing is lightweight and utility. If they are lightweight and give a lot of utility, they're generally really good off-perk weapons. So we had quite a few of these. We had like the Centerfire that just has high damage and it's lightweight. Double Barrel has high damage, gives you extra mobility. It's also lightweight. Hemoclobber, you can block, parry, deal high damage with, heal allies, heal yourself. Use it as a melee weapon so you're never going to run out of ammo with it, which is a big bonus. Medic Pistol, because it's extremely lightweight, you can heal with it, super cheap. Thanks for watching this video. Special thanks to all of the supporters of the channel. If you would like your name on this list, be sure to join the YouTube membership program or join the Patreon. Either way, it's only $1 a month and you get access to some of these videos early, as well as you get emotes and badges on your name if you join the YouTube membership program. All that really does help me out a lot. I will update this at the end of each month, so if you are a member, don't worry, your name will be added to this list by the end of the month. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!